It has been said that average people want you to stay average. Welcome to the Breaking Average podcast, the podcast designed to challenge you to break the mold that average has on the world. Each episode offers insights directly from those who choose to break average every day. Now, for the latest insights, here are your hosts, Paul Gustafson and Mike Harber.
Welcome to the Breaking Average podcast. Today, it's episode number 23, Michael Jordan's number. And my name is Paul Gustafson, and my co-host is Mike Harber, not Mike Jordan. Hey, Mike, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. I just can't believe you gave Michael Jordan props before you gave me props. But
well, 23.
I was doing good, Paul. I was doing good.
Well, 23. I can't resist that number.
Hey, I use 23 in one. That number is part of my PIN for my debit card, my credit card stuff because I love Michael Jordan so much. Believe it or not.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing that information.
And I'm like, yeah. Now you change it.
His other one is 45. So 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
Not true. Not true.
So, guys, just know that Mike's PIN number has the number 23 in it. Or maybe not.
Now, right? Maybe not. Maybe not.
So, yeah, Mike, this is so much fun, man. We have a blast, and it's just fun to be together. And we've got, some fellow studio guests here that have been with us for really since the beginning of season 2 and a little bit of last year too. But we're going to dive into the 7 critical factors of team strong leadership. We had a great conversation last week on communication, and we're going to dive a little deeper on that.
Yeah. 7 factors, Paul. I love the way you set this book up. We're going to continue to talk about one of those factors today, cooperate. I'm not a very good cooperator sometimes, Paul. I'm I like my own way. I'm selfish. This is going to be a challenge for me. I'm going to do my best to cooperate. I don't know if Rick has joined us yet. I'm going to do my best to cooperate with Rick. I don't really like Rick, but I'm going to work to cooperate with him today. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's fun. Some people actually take you literally, Mike. Do you know that?
Yeah, they do. They do. I know. And I love that because we get some of those comments in social media and stuff. They don't really get my dry sense of humor, do they?
We had somebody leave us because you made fun of Alabama. I'm just throwing that out, man.
Yeah.
And I'm not even, I just live here. I'm not even from Alabama.
And we all love Alabama. We're just having fun with it.
That's right. And look, all seriousness, but I love Mike Harber. I love it when he pokes at me. It wakes me up. It gets me fired up. It's a way to fire my engine up. So bring it on, Mike. I love every bit of it. I miss my older brothers, and you've taken that role.
Yeah, and I love Beaumont, Alabama. I'm not very good with movie quotes, but I do remember that one.
Oh yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, guys, I always love stories, and we have stories. We bring them to the table. We actually invite, as we sit down, we're like, hey, what's a good story to share? So Mike always challenges me with a story like, hey, what's a good story for this piece right here? And yeah, we talked about Chick-fil-A last week. There's another part of the story that I could unpack for you. But I'd encourage you guys to go grab the book. It's in there. There's some really good things. You gotta just unpack that story a little bit more for yourself by reading the book. But I want to share another one. Guys, have you ever seen the movie Apollo 13?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, this is a breathing test. I want to make sure you're there. Of course, you've seen it. It's a fantastic. I think that movie does a great reflection of cooperation. All right. Of really collaboration that we started talking about last week. And this is what this whole series is focused in on, is collaboration. But think about what took place, right? So you have Jim Lovell, who's out there in space with the, and everything goes to pot, right? It's not going to happen. They're not going to land on the moon. Are we going to be able to get them back? What's really compelling about this story, guys, is that Jim Lovell was a classmate of my father's. They both attended the Naval Academy, class of 52. And so I'm living in Brazil. there's no Twitter, there's no Facebook, no social media, but somehow we catch wind of what happened, right? Because we're watching. It's a moon mission. It's the third one. They're going to land on the moon for the third time. That was the goal. So my dad's kind of tuned in on it, finds out what happens. We're on pins and needles, essentially, trying to figure out what's going to happen. Meanwhile, the boys back in Houston and also Florida, they're working hard and feverishly. They're coming together. It's a great story. Watch that movie again. If you watch that movie, you're going to see some collaboration that happens, right? It's not enough for a leader to communicate. That's important, but you've got to get your teams to work together to figure it out. I mean, these guys were, think about this, before that launch, you had contractors who really didn't like each other, but they had to come together in that same room and figure out how to bring those boys back. And that centers on cooperation. And so that's the story I wanted to highlight today. I could unpack it more. It's great. Just watch the movie. It does a much better job than what I could do to narrate it. But you guys get the picture. By that collaboration, by that communication, that cooperation, we were able to bring them back, and it changed the game, right? They call it a successful failure. A successful failure. Why do they call it a failure but was successful? Well, it's a successful failure because they learned something. They brought them back. They kept them safe, and they actually were able to make lots of improvements to be able to put man back on that moon again on the next mission, and further. So it's just powerful.
Yeah, I love that movie, Paul. Love the story. I just watched Apollo 13 again within the last couple of weeks. I guess they're replaying it a lot right now because of the Mars rover landing, which is incredible. I mean, golly, I don't know if you've seen some of the images and stuff coming back from there, but it's I'm kind of a space junkie. Look, I'm a Star Wars junkie. I've watched Star Wars a million times, all of them, not one of them, but all of them a million times. So I love that. And, it is a great story around cooperation. Now, the scene that really kind of tugs at you is there's a scene where, they're trying to figure this out. And they start competing with one another in the cockpit, right? About who's at fault, I don't know if you remember that scene, but two of the astronauts are really kind of going at it. And Tom Hanks, who's, Lovell at the time, he kind of steps in and tells them to kind of get with it. Yeah. But cooperation is where we really have to set aside competition, right?
Yeah.
It's not who's right or who's going to win. It's how can we cooperate together in order to accomplish in this case, a life-saving mission. So I love the movie Apollo 13. Just watch it again, and it's a great story in the book that I hope our listeners will go read.
It's a great story. And you mentioned Star Wars. I'll mention this real quick. Have you seen Mandalorian?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Diane, Rick, have you guys seen that movie?
Baby Yoda's the best. I don't care what name they want to give him. It's Baby Yoda forever.
Yeah.
What is Diane, wrong with Diane?
I have not watched it yet. I haven't watched it yet.
Okay, Diane, you're here's a mission. All right. We're talking space, so we're going to give you a mission. Your mission, if you so choose to accept it, is to go watch The Mandalorian. And I'm going to give everybody else a mission too. If you have it, if you've got Disney Plus, because that's how you watch it. Watch the behind the scenes piece on The Mandalorian. It wasn't one director trying to make all these shows together. It was like a whole slew of them, like 8 or 9 of them. And the way they cooperated and worked together, it's just it's a symphony. It's an orchestra. It's just amazing how they did that. And so watch the behind the scenes piece. I watched that a couple of weeks ago and it was just amazing. But Diane, Rick, how you all doing?
Doing fantastic.
I accept the challenge. We have Disney Plus downstairs. Maybe that'll be this afternoon's kind of chill out.
Oh, you got to do it. You got to do it. So set us up, Diane. Tell us about the 3 elements of that we're talking about right now for this critical factor.
Yeah, because, collaboration is not just a one part. It's 3 parts. And we talked about communication last week and how the commitment from the leader to have that communication and that transparency flows into how we're collaborating. And then cooperation, which is what we're unpacking today and we're going to spend some more time on, is that spirit of cooperation, right? And I love the example where you were just talking about Tom Hanks kicks in and we have to eliminate the competition. And in competition, it's always one wants to be right, but we really want to get it right. And, that's one of the the pieces that we hear repeatedly from one of our mentors. And then thirdly, which we'll get into next week, is more about the interaction and how the common desire for the team to interact moves things forward. And we really have that collaboration piece. And Rick, I know you have some more to add to our story here.
For sure. First of all, it is the way. So the and Diane will pick up that joke after this.
I have spoken.
I'm like, I have to listen now.
Yeah, it is the way. So this one, when I researched quotes, this one was no research required. It is also 100% my favorite John Maxwell quote of all time. We all love John. There's tons of quotes that roll around. This one made the greatest impact to me. And it's something that I probably reference to 20, 30 times a week. And the quote is, you can be successful by yourself, but you will never be significant without a team. And once you taste significance, success will never satisfy. And I just, in the time that I heard that quote was just before I got a chance to go to Costa Rica with several people and John to do the transformation of Costa Rica, and got a chance to really taste what serving others and significance feels like. And it just lit a fire. And I've been forever changed by that trip and can never go back, and completely changed my focus of why I was driving my business. It wasn't driving my business to be successful. It was driving my business so I could afford to do more trips like that.
That's good. Yeah, I love that quote too, Rick. Thanks for bringing it back to my awareness as well. And we can dig into that a little bit more. I want to make sure that we talk about how our guests, how our listeners can learn more about us, learn more about Breaking Average, if they'll just visit breakingaveragePodcast.com. And really what we're looking for, Paul, is leaders that we can continue to bring to our listeners, right? Thought leaders in the industry. So if you know a leader out there that's doing something big, that's communicating, collaborating, and cooperating in a big way, we'd love for you to introduce them to us so we can bring them on as a guest interview on the Breaking Average podcast. So if you'll go to breakingaveragePodcast.com/leader, introduce them to us. There's a form on our page there that you can do that. Diane, why don't you talk to us about our sponsor for today?
I would love to talk about our sponsor today. Barb Gustafson is our sponsor today. She's also a contributing author in the Breaking Average podcast. And her system, her method is discovering your next step. So if you want to go learn a little bit more about Barb, who happens to be Paul's beautiful wife and one of my really close sisters as well, you can go right to her site. It's www.discovernextstep.com. And she's got this really cool free tool out there for you to give yourself permission. Barb talks about being bold and giving yourself permission to be bold. And a lot of times introverted people are not really willing to step out into that. And Barb's created a tool about some self-management and some tips for honoring yourself, honoring your mind, your body, your spirit, your soul, and stepping into your bold fully so that you can move forward and create the best life that you have. And so it's discover your next step. And we'll make sure that you have it in the show notes as well. So check it out.
Yeah, that's cool. Makes me smile, right? She does. She's made an impact in my life for sure, guys. So definitely check that out. You guys, in the book Breaking Average, and this is why I'm so excited about this. This cooperation piece is, to me, one of the more critical elements to it, because we talked about leadership, the leader's role in communicating, but the reality is that a leader isn't any good unless he's got a team that's doing it with him or her, right? So if the team's doing it with them, what do they need to do? They need to cooperate, right? You can look at that word, and we say cooperation, but if you slow it down a little bit, if you add the pause, like Diane talked about last week, making sure you put the pause in. I'm going to put a pause right there. Listen to that. Cooperation. Why is this important? Rick, what are your thoughts on this?
Cooperation is what can make a team come together, right? And it also shows value, and that you value them. And I think it does a lot, in terms of showing that you don't have ego as well as a leader, right? I love a story that John shares about making sure. I think he was talking about his nephew, and getting into his first job, and he says, every day look to help somebody else. See somebody carrying a box, go help them carry the box. If you see somebody doing a task, go help them. Just help unabashedly. And it's something that I've kind of done throughout my career as well. And it's interesting because when people feel value, then they want to feel that again. Mm-hmm. And then they start to think about what made them feel value. And it was the fact that you were helping them. So then they started to help. I did I did this thing when I built a PMO at a bank. I was just searching for different things I could do for the team. One of the most effective things that we did with the team was I implemented a point system based on whose line is it anyway. Right? My great friend from high school, Wayne Brady's on the show. I've loved that show forever. Yeah. But it says where everything's made up and the points don't matter. And so I rolled out this program and said, look, I want you to assign points to your team members. It can be as many or whatever, and there's no set points for anything. But I want you to go around and talk to each team member and give them points for something that you saw. And what that really did was make them actively, they knew they were going to speak. They knew they had to say something positive about the team members. So they actively searched for the positive things that their team members were doing throughout the week. And this team I was so irrelevant so fast. It was amazing to watch how quickly they gelled. And all of a sudden that turned into real long lasting friendships as well. Like my entire team would go to lunch together, and I'd have other team managers come up to me and other people wanting to be a part of that team because they just saw how they interacted, how they cooperated with each other. And it's just interesting that when you flip that focus, what kind of true productivity and things that can be gained. And I think that starts though too with the leader in cooperation in getting down into the work. Something I think you said, Mike, on the last podcast about visibility of a leader. Maybe it was you, Paul. It was you, Mike. Visible. So many leaders will go into their office and they become invisible. You need to be visible as a leader. I think you not only need to be visible, but you need to be doing some of these tasks side by side with the team to be able to grow. I remember when I first started in restaurant management, I was going to outwork I was going to show everybody that, there was no job too dirty for me. I was going to outwork everybody. So I'm working my tail off. And there's this other manager who didn't lift a finger, but everybody loved him. And what I realized is I was doing everybody's work. He was empowering them to do their own. And there was this huge difference in how they interacted with us. Everybody thought my ego was involved. Like I was trying to show them how to do their job better. Here I am thinking I'm hustling and sweating and gaining points by just doing the work. And so it's really interesting to focus on finding the positive and rewarding the positive and find ways to get your people to make sure that they're seeing positive in others. And two, making sure that you're empowering. So cooperate, don't overtake.
Ooh,
that's good.
Ooh, say that again, Rick.
Yeah, cooperate, don't overtake.
Yeah,
I like it.
That is so good. That's like a mic drop right there. Let's pause for a minute.
Yeah, I have a lot of those.
There you go, Mike. Diane, you've got a couple of stories on this whole cooperation too, right? So share one that comes to mind for you.
Well, and Rick just pivoted it for me because you're talking about the ego, and Kat Cole has been talking about hustle and heart and the humility that we have to have as a leader, right? And knowing that we don't know it all, and so that invites the conversation for more cooperation. If a leader is having a conversation, knows that I really don't know it all, but I know that you're closer to it, I need to be able to walk with you and sit down with you and help you, have you show me where it is. And it takes a lot for a leader to do that. And Mike, to the visibility standpoint as well, in my career at the bank as well, we would have these engagement conversations. And one of the things from the leader to be able to have that cooperation and help move the team forward was we needed to hear from you. We needed to see from you. And we also wanted to be able to have that two-way communication. And it also leads me to the environment that we've been in. We talk a lot of volunteer leadership, right? Mm-hmm. Volunteer leadership is the hardest leadership role you're ever going to have because, you might have a title in an organization of volunteers, but how do you move them forward? Volunteerism is the biggest place where we will have to work on that cooperation in the community. And one of the stories that came to my mind recently was, I'm a member of a BNI chapter, Business Networking International. And so when we went pandemic and everything that we used to do was in a meeting, we suddenly went to Zoom, and there was a new environment that was with that. How do you shift that? How do you get people to understand that? And a lot of times people didn't have the technical knowledge to be able to do those two things. One of our presidents, she's been able to use the tool and then pull in everybody into that a little bit more, and ask for the support and ask for the help. And so having that cooperation in a new environment and opening the doors to those conversations have really, really been helpful to keep us moving forward and focusing forward. And Mike, I know you're going to have more on that.
Yeah, it's good. I love that. Rick was talking a minute ago. It reminded me of a boss I once had, Rick. You talk about visibility is not enough, but actually working together, like getting, the leader getting their hands dirty. I had a boss once who I really didn't like the way he talked to me, but I had a lot of respect for him. He was a millionaire. He's an entrepreneur. He didn't have to work, but he would come to town and get dirty with me, right? And he would get in whatever we were doing, he would get dirty with me. And I'm an acts of service guy. My love language is acts of service. I don't need words of affirmation. I don't need you to tell me how great I am. I already know it. So
back to that ego.
But I do like, those acts of service, right? And that was an act of service from him, showing me that he cared, showing me he would get dirty with me. And it reminds me of a quote from Henry Ford. He said, coming together is the beginning. Keeping together is progress. Working together is success. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, is kind of the essence of cooperation, right? Is working together. When we begin to work together. And look, this is an area I struggle with a lot because I am, I'm a loner. I'm a high D. I just want to get it done. I don't really like to get involved in people's feelings and all that kind of stuff that really come along with good leadership. And Paul, you shared a quote in the book from William Wood. It said, leadership is based on inspiration, not domination, on cooperation, not intimidation. Mm. Look, I'm real honest about who I am today, but early in my leadership, I was the essence of intimidation and domination. Mm. That was my style. I'm a high D, type A, get it done. And if you didn't do it, you didn't come along. I griped at you. I yelled at you. I thought that was leadership. That's kind of what was modeled to me growing up. And luckily I had some great leaders in the military that kind of challenged me to learn to cooperate, learn to communicate, learn to collaborate, learn to work together to be successful. So cooperation is vital in order for us to get along. If we didn't cooperate on this podcast, if we were just jockeying for position, if we were fighting, we have a lot of fun and I pick on everybody. That's just kind of my style, and y'all let me operate in that, right? It's all in fun for our listeners. It really is. I love everybody that I do this with. So it's really all in fun for us. But one of the things I had to learn, great quote from Andy Stanley, he said, leaders who don't listen will eventually be surrounded by people who have nothing to say.
Wow.
That's cooperation,
yeah,
or a lack thereof, right? If we're not, as leaders, if we're not listening, we're not cooperating, and we're going to be surrounded by people who have nothing to say, and we're going to get ran over by the bus, as a leader. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of my thoughts around that, Paul.
That's powerful. And that was the quote that you were trying to pull on our last podcast. So there it is, guys.
Yeah.
So that's cool. Leaders who don't listen will eventually be surrounded by people who have nothing to say. Powerful thought. And I love the William Wood quote that we have in the book there. Leadership is based on inspiration, not domination, on cooperation, not intimidation. I think of Tony Dungy, guys, right? Think of the impact that he made. We've talked about Tony before, but there is a coach whose leadership was based on inspiration, not domination, who focused on cooperation and bringing everybody together, not intimidation. Certainly there's coaches out there and some famous coaches that were very intimidating, but the best coaches in football and other sports, I think really they were inspiring, right? They inspired their players to come together. They inspired their players to cooperate. And that word itself has meaning, guys, right? And I've already put the pause in there so you know it, but think about it. The word cooperate comes from two distinct Latin words, guys. Co means together. Operi means to work. You talked about the quote, the Henry Ford quote's on the front of our book too, right? Powerful quote, about working together is success. Cooperation by contributors multiplies the value of the organization. That's the effect of it, right? It's a scaling game. It's not just an addition game. It's a multiplication game. Cooperation by contributors multiplies the value of the organization. And Chick-fil-A, we talked about them a lot. I love how they bring in their cooperators. Think about that. Dwarf House, they're trying to make it all happen there. We talked about that story last time. But it's not just about the chicken sandwich. It's about multiplying that, creating cooperators out there, other operators, other stores. And so they get contributors. They call them owner operators. And they invest $10,000 into it. Once they pass the test, they put $10,000 of their own money into it. Like, I want to be an owner operator at this Chick-fil-A down the street, right? It's not that easy. You got to pass that stringent test, but you got to put some dollars in. And if you're given the green light, then they're going to financially support you along the way. And they teach you it's all about cooperation. It's just powerful. So guys, how do we cultivate that spirit of cooperation? Let's dive into that. What do we do? Diane, what are your thoughts? How do we cultivate cooperation?
Well, and it was two quotes that came to mind, and I think Rick and Mark, I'm changing your name now, Mike, just in case you're having I just wanted to make sure you were paying attention.
I'm good with that.
Two of them came to mind because if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together, right? And Mike, you were talking about that as somebody who's very task oriented. We just want to go get it done. It's faster to do it myself. And my other favorite quote is, what I can do, you can't, and what you can't, I can't, but together we can do great things. And that's from Mother Teresa. And when we're talking spirit of cooperation, we can't possibly do it all, have it all, be it all alone. And so really identifying where those strengths are. And Rick, you were talking about the team and how they gelled and how we focused on the positive of what they were doing. It was really appreciating other people's strengths. And as we sit there and we participate in that and we focus on whether the strengths are rather than what the weaknesses are, that can bring the cooperation together and bring the cooperation together quickly, because I just know that I can't do it all. I'm never going to be great at everything. But I know that if I need the details to be done, and I desperately need somebody around me who keeps the details going, that together we can achieve those great things and bring the significance that we're looking for together.
If we're talking about how do we cultivate it, though, It's funny. There's things that I've stumbled into just by doing things, or you almost think like you've come up with it, but it's just a technique that you try or something that you do. And then later you get to study under people that talk about the why and the science of it. And that happened to me recently. So one of the things that I do to honor my father, and we've talked about it on the show all the time, is just to pick up a bar tab or to pick up a meal. But one of the most fun aspects of that is not only, for the person that we're doing that for, but is for the server, the person, because we tell them, look, in no certain circumstances can they know who it is. Right. I don't want anybody to know it's me. I just want, and you can even say it's you, and they have fun with that. And, I started doing that, at events and things like that. And I did that at Maxwell. And what was interesting with the Maxwell team, was the consistency of the environment. We're at the same location twice a year, right? Same people. And so they started to know that was something I did, and it was something they wanted to participate in. And so it was interesting to see how they kind of cooperated with me in order to pull some of these things off. So I walk into a certain location in Marriott. The moment I walk in, they just start pulling tables together, and my drink of choice is on the table, and they're pointing out to me people in the restaurant that are people that I've asked them to look for, but they're so participative in it. And what's interesting about that is it's a fun thing, but I got a chance to study under Dr. Cialdini, and he wrote an incredible book on the science and practice of persuasion. And one of the top 5 factors is reciprocation. If you want a team to cooperate, then the best way to get them to cooperate is to allow them to reciprocate your cooperation. Coming back to you, Mike, and that, you had this leader, you didn't even like his style, but the fact that he got dirty with you, right? You wanted to reciprocate that hard work. Bram, you wanted to show him like, hey, that was appreciated. I'm going to work right here with you. Yeah, I'm going to get dirty right with you. And reciprocation is a really, really powerful act in the sense of it goes all the way back to the golden rule. Right? The golden rule is talking about reciprocation. Do unto others as you want done unto yourself. That's reciprocation. Act well, serve others, and that's allowing people to come back and serve you. So if you want to foster cooperation and you really want to cultivate, my challenge to you then is to be first. Be the first one to cooperate. How many times have you heard the argument like, well, I don't like the way this person did it. Well, you did this to me. They're reciprocating negative behavior. And we can reciprocate positive behavior just as much as we can reciprocate negative behavior. And there's even studies behind it. Dr. Cialdini shares with one of it in his book about surveys. How many times do we get hit on with surveys, right? You get an email and says, hey, fill out this survey and we'll give you a $50 gift card or something of that sort. They did this study where they sent people $5 checks and they said, hey, you can cash this check free and clear. If you want to, there's a survey, right? Yeah. So it was a true gift. Yes. Now, when you say fill out the survey and we'll give you a $50 gift card, that's a bribe. It's not a gift because you're expecting something in return. When I started to pick up the tabs at the bar there, that was a gift for my father and for the person that I was doing it with. But it wasn't A, for me to be big man on campus, or B, so they would buy me a drink later. It was just truly a gift. There was no expectation of return whatsoever. Now, I can tell you the gifts that I've received in return because of that, in long-lasting friendships, in opportunities that have come my way, that's amazing. But I don't do it with the intent that something's going to return to me. I do it with the intent of the gift to my father. So coming back to even to the $5 check, really interesting in the study. They got much more positive result from the $5 check. But one of the most interesting things is nobody, in the 3 studies that they ran, nobody cashed the check and didn't fill out the survey. And I just, again, it's so powerful when you start to think about reciprocation. Make sure that we're first and make sure that we're putting positive behavior so that we're focusing on that piece.
Yeah, I like that, Rick, the idea of going first, right? But for me, I've never had a problem going first. But when we talk about cooperating, I love, you kind of brought it to this idea of cooperating. I'm really good at going first and doing something, but not necessarily cooperating. I kind of, growing up, we all heard the lead by example, right? That's what I'm good at going first at, lead by example. But sometimes maybe I don't need to be lead by example. I need to be the first to challenge someone else to go first. You be the one to lead by example. I'll follow you this time, right? Versus me going first. And so I love, this idea of cooperating. I can challenge someone else to go first and then let me follow them versus saying, hey, I'm going to go and you follow my lead. And that's something I've had to learn because I'm a D. We talk a lot about disc. I like to be in front. I like to be the leader. And for me, one of the things I've really worked hard on in the last 10 or 15 years, and I'm starting to get better at it. Notice I said I've been working on it for 10 to 15 years. I'm starting to get better at it, is allowing others to lead, not feeling like I've got to be the tip of the spear, so to speak. And so that is something I think that we all probably could do a better job of learning. But for me, I talk a lot about the first book I read, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I'm not shy about saying that I've read my first book when I was 23 years old, and that was it, 7 Habits. And I reference that book a lot. And the one habit out of that book is seek first to understand before asking to be understood, right? And I think that to me is where I every day, Rick, you used a quote from John Maxwell earlier that you kind of reference every day. This is the quote I reference every day. What do I need to do to seek to understand this person's perspective before I try to lead them, before I try to go first. I need to seek to understand. That's how I try to force myself into this idea of cooperating with others. Because usually I think that I'm right. I joke a lot about myself, but sometimes it's not really a joke. I believe I am right most of the time. But I try to force myself to seek to understand others so that I can get a different perspective and then cooperate with them or get buy-in from them if I have a different idea versus trying to force my way.
Mike, I want to challenge something though that you just said though is I love your aspect of leading by example, right? And so instead of maybe allowing somebody else to lead by example, challenge them to say, hey, I was first in doing this. Who are you going to be first for? Mm-hmm. Right. So you can still lead by example and then point them into the direction of finding something they can go lead first with somebody else and then build that kind of reciprocation change where that team is starting to collaborate more.
Yeah, that's good.
So when you guys were talking, here's the thing that came to me too about cooperation is the time factor. There's time invested in that. It takes time to build the cooperation. It takes time for collaboration to begin. And I think we sometimes underestimate the amount of time that it takes a team to be able to do that. So as we were talking, we need to account for and invest in the time that it's going to take to bring that collaboration and that cooperation to the table and for things to gel immediately. So that was kind of came through. So I needed to share that while we were talking.
That's good. This is great. Guys, our favorite movie that we picked was I almost said Apollo 13, but it was Remember the Titans, right? Remember that?
Yes.
And there's that great scene where, they're in Gettysburg. They're at, it's before the season starts and they're not getting along at all. Mike shared the story of them running into under the cemetery. This is a different scene. This is where Bertier grabs grabs Julius and says, "What are you doing? You're not blocking. You got all this talent. You're not doing enough." And he goes, "What are you talking about?" And then so there's this fight that kind of goes on, and it's a verbal fight. It's a verbal joust. And then Julius puts Bertier really on the ropes. And he says, because Bertier responds, "Well, that attitude's going to get you nothing. That's not going to do nothing." And then, so Julius says to him, "Attitude reflects leadership, Captain." And then Bertier has no words. The next scene that they show in that movie is you see Bertier step up. He's the leader. He's the high D, like Mike talks about. But he does something there that's really profound. He sees that there was some racial tension and some of the white players weren't blocking for the black players and so forth, right? Work both ways. He goes up and says, "What are you doing? You got to block for him." And then he steps up and there's a spirit of cooperation that takes place right then and there in that scene in that movie. It's so powerful. And I love it, right? Sports is a great example. Football, again, think about it, right? The quarterback, there's a center holding the ball. The center hands the ball off to the quarterback. The quarterback takes it, hands the ball off to the running back or throws it, right? Think about all the cooperation that takes place for those 11 players to move that ball down the field. That's cooperation, working together, right? And so I love this theme that we have. Cooperation means serving with others, right? We're building and serving with others. I just happened to have this book sitting here and I didn't even realize it was here. Together is Better. Simon Sinek. Short little book, easy book. You can read it in 30 minutes. On the back, it says, working hard for something we don't care about is called stress. But working hard for something we love is called passion. And I think that's the key is what is it that we're passionate about? Let's gather together, find out what we're passionate about. Let's make a difference. And I've got plenty of other stories we can unpack. We just don't have time for it. But I think that football story, the Remember the Titans story, that's a great example of how they came together and they cooperated. So it's been fun. We've got I'm thrilled that my wife is the sponsor of today's show. So kudos to my wife, Barbara Gustafson. So go to Discover Next Step, guys. Download her Give Yourself Permission checklist. It's a great list of self-management tips to really honor you and help you be your best. And excited about that. And Mike, I think we're ready, man. Tip and challenge time. I want to thank our in-studio guests, Rick and Diane. Once again, you guys have been fantastic. Thanks for working with us, cooperating with us on this, and just love your thoughts. Any final thoughts for you guys, Diane, Rick? So, guys, again, thanks for joining us. Mike, tell me, what is your tip and challenge for our listeners?
Yeah, this has been a fun conversation. As I said at the outset, cooperation would challenge me. It does challenge me. It's really tough. And I think my tip is just to be a cooperator. Like, make that a mindset, right? I really think it is a mindset. To be a cooperator, look for ways to cooperate versus compete. In America, we are taught from an early age to compete with one another. And then we become adults and we're asked to cooperate with one another. Isn't that kind of oxymoronic or whatever that big word is? I'm not sure that's a word. Is that a word? Oxymoronic?
It's a Mikeism right now.
In Arkansas, it is. It's a word.
In Arkansas, it's a word. So, cooperation is just way more powerful than competition. Sometimes I can win, but when we win, man, I have somebody to celebrate with, right? But when I win, it's just me. It goes away pretty quick. But when we win, we can relive that over and over and over again together, over time. So I just think be a cooperator. And then, we talked about the quote Henry Ford used. It's on the front cover of Breaking Average book. Coming together is the beginning. Staying together is progress. Working together is success. So we find ways to work together. I'm reading a book right now, Paul, called The Obstacle is the Way. So I think we have to use obstacles of working together to find a way to success and learn more about yourself and others along the way. I think those two things right there, Paul, just have a mindset of cooperation and then use obstacles in working together with others to learn more about yourself and them so you can find better ways to cooperate with each other.
Yeah. That's cool. I love that because I had a conversation with Mark Batterson the other day, and he was talking about that one of his habits in his new book, Win the Day. And it's about kissing the wave. It's really about, he talks about the obstacle is the way, and sometimes we have to kiss that wave, whatever challenges that's right in front of us, and leverage that and realize that there are other people around us that we can pull together. Leaders communicate. We talked about that last week. Contributors cooperate. If you're a leader, you should also be a contributor. Cooperate, work together. That builds trust. That builds chemistry. How do you do that? You don't ask someone to do something you wouldn't do. That's what I would say. All right. There's a lot of different practical things, but I think that's most important. Don't ask someone to do something that you wouldn't do. That makes a big difference. Have you guys seen the show Undercover Boss?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
All right. Now it's kind of, it's obviously because it's filmed and produced. Just like, how do they not know that's the undercover boss? But the premise is fantastic and the stories are great. But I think you can do the same thing. You don't need a film crew to do this. Go be an undercover boss wherever you're at, with whatever organization you support, whether it's a nonprofit that you're doing something in the community, whether it's in the workplace, wherever it is, whether it's in your neighborhood. Be an undercover boss. Engage with folks. Engage with your team. Contribute. And then watch the impact that takes place. Watch the reciprocity that we talked about earlier that Rick talked about. Really, it's just powerful. Cooperation it's infectious. It's infectious. And so that's my tip and challenge.
Yeah, that's good, Paul. I love that. I do a lot of work in the hospital industry and often challenge leaders to be a patient for a day, right? Because when they get patient complaints, they often blame the patient, right? Well, have you been a patient for the day? I mean, go drive up in the parking lot and start your experience right there. What is the experience? What is the patient experience, the family experience? And then find out what's really going on so you can cooperate with your customer to find better ways to do things, because they're the real people we need to be cooperating with. So that's kind of like being the undercover boss, Paul. I love that as well. I want to give a final thank you to you, Paul, for writing the book and inviting us to collaborate with you, to cooperate with you as co-authors and co-hosts on the Breaking Average podcast. I also want to invite our listeners to visit our website, breakingaverage.com. There's lots of good tools and resources and blog posts on there that you can learn more than what we're just sharing on the Breaking Average podcast.
Great conversation today, guys. Thanks so much for being a part of this dialogue and this discussion. Guys, this topic on breaking average, on making contributions and making an impact in that area is so huge. And so I'm excited to be able to share that today. Once again, I'm inspired by our mission of leadership and breaking average. Join us again next time.
Thank you for listening to the Breaking Average podcast. If you loved what you heard, please take a moment to subscribe. All opinions and comments expressed in this podcast are those of the participants and do not reflect the opinions or views of any of the advertisers, producers, or platforms. This show was produced by R2 Multimedia. A special thank you to Milestone Melodies for our theme music. As you continue your day, what is one action that you can apply from this podcast to your life? Tune in for our next episode as we continue to challenge everyone to break average.